Morning, pen friends. This is Andy Dawn from pandapenclub.com, writing with a Fuliwen 017 snake. The name of the brand, Fuliwen. It is in fact made up of 3 Chinese characters, 3 separate characters with 3 separate meanings and implications. So it's quite interesting to know what they're getting at with their brand name instead of just having it as a load of random sounds. Fu. Now you can hear the way I pronounce that with a sort of sharp downward intonation. It's the 4th tone in Chinese, and the character fu is written like this. Fu. Now, why is it written like this, and what does it mean? It means abundant or wealthy. And if you break down the character, you find a sort of useful way of remembering that. First off, you have this part of the character. Which is almost a little pictogram. It means building, or it looks like a roof, but you can think of it as meaning building or container for all your stuff. And then the second component of the character, fu, this part gives it the sound, fu, and it also means sort of to fill. So pouring all your stuff into an opulent container, such as a building, where you protect it and assert your ownership over it, and thereby, well, things are in abundance for you. You are wealthy. You are one of the 1%, perhaps. So that's fu. And the second part, the second character, li. And I also pronounce that with a downward intonation. That's also the 4th tone. And this is a slightly simpler character to write. It's 7 strokes, whereas the previous character was 12 strokes rather. So this is the character li, and this means, or at least it has many meanings, but for the purposes of Fuliwen, I think I'm going to take it to mean fluent. Now, how can we think about this character? What are the different parts of it? Well, first off, you have this part, meaning grain. And again, there's a sort of pictographical element to this. At least there is for me. There's something a little bit like those, little ears of corn drawings you might have tried to do. Does that look like an ear of corn to anyone? I'm not sure what that looks like, but there's something, to me at least, that about this character that evokes corn and grain and plant life, I suppose. So how do we get from grain to fluent? Well, the other component here is also, thankfully, somewhat evocative of its meaning, which is, or at least it's a shorthand for this character, which means knife. So we have the original meaning of this character to sort of cut down, cut down for the harvest. So you can imagine, I don't know, a scythe. God, aren't my drawings great? A scythe cutting down the harvest. And that quickly gets us, I think, to the word sharp. And it's not very hard to imagine how that gets us to notions like incisive or verbally sharp. And that gets us to fluent or eloquent language or quick of speech. Li shi, quick of speech, or shun li, meaning smoothly or without a problem. So you can imagine this scythe sweeping through the air, cutting down corn in an elegant, smooth, fluid gesture. And then finally, wen. So I pronounce this slightly differently. Wen, with a sort of inquiring tone, second tone, this one. And this is far simpler than either of them to write. It's only 4 strokes. It's a bit lopsided, but you get the idea. I'll try it again for you. Oh, Chinese people will be cringing at that. There we are. You get the idea. Wen. And this, well, the meaning that we will take this to have here, or I take this to have here, is language or writing. Now, the history of this, as you can imagine, for such an enormous, multi-dimensional, fascinating subject and topic, and, well, it's the word. It may well have been the original word. It describes what it is. And I believe the original version of this character I'm now going to attempt to draw looked a little like this. A little like that. Maybe a little narrower here on the legs. Maybe a bit too wide. Let's try one more time, since my artistic skills leave something to be desired. There. That's sort of like the original form of the character, in that, you know, we're talking eons back. And this, as I said, these are legs, because this is depicting a human body with markings on it. Perhaps tattoos. So we have markings. Markings brings us to writing and, of course, language. One of the biggest innovations human beings ever pulled off, and kind of, you might say, the ultimate embellishment to our natural state, the ultimate alteration. I was talking to my friend about this, actually. He pointed out wen guan, guan meaning official. So wen guan means officers who write and make strategies. So the cunning classes, the cunning classes of fighters. Now, that brings us to where we began, Fuliwen. My Google Translate comes out with a rather grotesque translation for Fuliwen. I say grotesque, I mean macho. Sometimes I can't help but equate the two. It sounds fully man. It sounds like the sort of early days of Gillette or something. So trying to think of a better way to understand Fuliwen. Maybe, well, you have abundant, fluent language or writing. So maybe endless, aquiline, wordplay might not be too far of a stretch. What do you think? How would you translate Fuliwen? This is Andy Dorm from pandapenclub.com on the Panda Pen Club channel on YouTube. Thanks for watching.